And what do you do when you have all sorts of different glands and organs that have all sorts of different nutritional and energetic requirements? If you only ate fruit, parts of you would start to die, like your sex drive and your ability to recover from exercise. So these are kind of like very poorly thought out concepts. And just because something has a lot of carbohydrate or a lot of sugar, if you call that energy, yeah, that's good. But what do you do when you need fat and protein to hold your cells together? So do you understand my point? Each element or each nutritional source has a kind of vibrational energy that's unique to that product. And your body needs certain types of energy and certain types of vibration for certain functions, right? A radio wave is a relatively low vibration compared to microwaves or light. Well, if we just said radio waves are good vibration and light's a bunch of garbage, get rid of it, the whole planet would die, wouldn't it? So you see, if you just think about this rationally or logically, which is hard to do if you're not healthy, is it? Most people aren't healthy enough to think deep enough to even know whether or not what they're saying is actually very intelligent at all. And if that was true, then why did God put animals on this planet, and why have human beings been eating them since the very beginning of time? And the question I have, if that was true, how would we survive in places like British Columbia, Alaska, England, and Europe when the ground freezes in the winter? And I hate to tell you, but plants don't grow in ice very well. So when you live anywhere where the ground freezes in the winter, if you're not eating those bad vibrations, you're dead. And none of you would be here.
The one thing that was interesting, I know a lot of people that we know that eat the raw vegan diet,
yeah.
they do it for athletic performance.
Yeah.
In the sense that they do, like, I think most of them are endurance athletes.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some that are not. Most are endurance athletes.
Yeah.
And we know a few people that run like 100-mile races.
Yep.
And then they run the next day and the next day.
Yep.
How is that possible? Is it just like a different kind of exercise? Like it's easier to recover from endurance sports, or
these are normally the guys who are eating like almost nothing but fruit.
Yeah,
lots of fruit sugar.
Okay, good. Now, let me ask you a question. If you surveyed 1,000 ultra-endurance racers, how many different diet plans would you find?
Quite a bit, maybe.
Quite a lot. And you would find some of them that are eating fat and meat that are doing well.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for you. How did the Maoris get to New Zealand?
How did they get there?
Yeah. Did they take a 747 or did they paddle their ass off across the oceans in a friggin' canoe?
I would go with the latter.
Okay, good. My point is, if you look at a lot of these native tribes that made massive migrations and went huge amounts of miles in extreme conditions, they had to do it eating fat and protein, and most of them were hunters and nomads. Nomads, by definition, means follow the meat. So all I'm saying to you is there are some ultra-distance racers out there that can get by on bananas and peanuts and raisins. But for every one of them, there's a guy standing right next to them that needs to eat meat or fatty foods or whatever. So just because somebody's the champion of the day and is eating bananas all day doesn't mean everybody should eat bananas. That's the same disease that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
We have to be intelligent about this. And just because one guy reaches the top of the ladder wearing blue shoes and Calvin Klein underwear doesn't mean everybody should wear blue shoes and Calvin Klein underwear. This is just absolute human stupidity and is a symptom of an inability to understand what diet and lifestyle is itself.
So he may have found what works for him, but that's not necessarily... So it might be a fallacy to tell everyone else that this works for you.
And wait a few years.
Yeah, wait. Oh, you think
and what do you think's going to happen? He might end up coming out and saying 2 years from now, wow, I ended up getting adrenal exhaustion or cancer, and I found out that my bananas just weren't enough to repair my body, and he may have been so damn high on adrenaline he looks good and feels good because he's buzzing off the death of his own body, and the mind is powerful enough to push the body into complete extinction. You know that. So the point is, what works today may not work for tomorrow, and how many elite athletes and human beings all over the planet could tell you a story just like that? Oh, I did really good on this diet, but that started causing me problems and I had to change. Isn't that one of the most common stories you ever hear?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what's the point? That's working for you today. What's going to work for me today? Let me test that. And once you're vital and you have a relationship with yourself, you know when to eat bananas, you know when to eat beef, you know when to eat chicken, you know, then all the silly games are over.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. All of this is just the symptoms of a sick society. That's all it is. And just because someone can run 100 miles 3 times in a row doesn't mean they're intelligent, doesn't mean they're spiritually evolved. Maybe it means that they are in desperate need of a relationship with themselves, and it was the only way they could get away from their parents long enough to find themselves. So it just turned out that their own medicine or dysfunction makes them famous. How many young men that are successful in kickboxing and boxing are only successful because they're so angry at their father that they're actually expressing the violence toward their father in a boxing ring, and it made them successful. So now they can't ever heal from it because they got so much attention for being violent without realizing that they're actually expressing a dysfunction in the relationship with their father. Right? I tested that on the Army boxing team, which I was the trainer of. Once I realized that a lot of my anger that made me a good fighter, that got me a lot of rewards, was really coming from my pain in my relationship to my stepfather, I thought, this is an interesting thing that I've identified here. I wonder how many of the fighters on the boxing team have the same thing. There's 30 guys at that time, 30 men on the U.S. Army boxing team, which is the third best boxing team in the world. The only people that ever beat us was Cuba and Russia. From my boxing team in the 1988 Olympics, 11 of the 12 boxers on the U.S. Olympic boxing team came from my boxing team that I trained. Okay? So my point is this. I said, how many of you guys right now are still pissed off at your fathers and have unresolved relationships and don't feel comfortable being around your father? 29 of 30 hands went up. Okay? 29 of 30 hands. And I've looked into this extensively, and I've found that there's a very, very high percentage of athletes in combative martial arts that have unresolved issues of anger with mother or father, usually the father amongst the males. So really what I'm telling you is they take a pathology, and because they get rewarded for it, like smashing the shit out of someone in football and spearing them with your helmet. And so you take the best player on their team out and all your buddies say, great job, yeah, yeah. So what do you think? You think that's a good thing? Well, the next thing you know, you're famous on television for acting out your anger towards your father. All I'm saying is, we've got to be very, very careful about deifying how one person creates success. Because ultimately, we don't really know if it's success or disease in the long run.
Yeah.
Right? So is the person healthy? Are they happy? Are they living their dreams? And do they have a spiritual life? If those things are in place, remember, that still doesn't mean you should emulate it. Because if your mother's an Eskimo and your father's an Eskimo, and the guy you're deifying has two parents that are inland aboriginals that are used to living on plant food because there's no animals to eat in the desert like that, you got completely different genetics. Opportunity to develop a spiritual relationship with ourselves and understand our unique body, mind, and spirit individuality, yet honor and worship those that are also good examples, but be sensitive to the fact that if we emulate them, it may or may not work for us.
Yeah, I mean that's cool. I like the fact that you've brought up about the boxers and everything, because I've noticed personally when unfortunately I don't have any family issues, like any serious family issues, but sometimes I do have like temporary, like I'll have girl problems or problems with my brother, and the best way I found to heal that is like going to do a sport like boxing or just swimming my heart out until I feel better.
It transfers the energy into another form of energy and calms you down. It also gives you a chance to be with yourself.
Yeah, and luckily those family problems are not permanent, so they're fixed, and I don't have a desire to do that. But I could see if I had a permanent family issue that...
Yeah, it could be problematic.
Yeah.
And can you also see how that anger could make you very successful in some sports?
I've said that before. I was like, if I felt like this all the time, like I've been sort of depressed before, and I went to go, I'm like, I can just go work out. I'm going to work out so hard until I don't feel this anymore.
Yeah.
I could see if I was permanently in that state of mind, I would just keep working out until I was the best in the world.
And do you also see how enough young men watching you do that could actually think that's the way you become successful?
Yeah.
And so they go from being a normal person in a happy family to emulating your anger.
Yeah.
Well, good. What do you think happens when young people all over the world watch Dennis Rodman kick a referee in the balls? Right? And get fined $30,000, which would be like fining you 10 cents.
Yeah.
Right? This guy's probably making $150,000, $180,000 a game. Fining him $30,000 or whatever for kicking a referee in the nuts, that's just absolute silliness. My point is that all the challenges that we have in life are growth opportunities. They're a chance for us to learn to convert pain into beauty.
I like that.
Right? That's really that's our prerogative. No one's going to force you to do it. No one's going to put you on a fast track lesson. And that's really what spiritual development is learning to see the gift in any situation. And if the best thing you can do is call a timeout and get the hell out of Dodge so you can get to the gym and breathe and lift weights and process, that's a far better thing to do than just engage in combat just because you're angry, because as you know, fighting fire with fire doesn't put a fire out.